Hello again. Welcome again to the scientific writing class. Today I will explain the different paper types, and the different types of articles are original research articles or review papers. So original research is considered a primary source of scientific evidence or scientific argument. It presents scientific evidence, it reports original research, and it's published in peer-reviewed journals. An article is considered original research if it reports a study written by the researchers who did the study, and if the researcher tackles a novel research question and purpose of study, reports their methods, results, and discuss implications of the study in a way that lives up to scientific conventions. We'll often follow the basic structure of the research paper that we discussed. You remember the IMBRAD structure, where we had differences in the sections, for example, introduction, methods, results, and so on. So there's various types of original research papers. So here we present new empirical findings, for example, quantitative methods analysis or qualitative methods analysis or case studies. This is typically what we work in the experimental field. Like when I go to the Arctic, I take data, I run long-term observations. These data are analyzed using statistics, and we use these also as case studies for specific experiments. There's also original research papers that present new methodology advancements. For example, if you have a new probe or so that measures measures in a new and novel way, then you can also publish this in a research paper. So, for example, you can also test existing methods on new data, or what I just said, developing new methods to investigate existing problems and proof of concepts. Then the third type of original research paper can present new theoretical arguments. You use empirical cases evidence to advance theoretical arguments, or you analyze new empirical issues with existing theoretical frameworks. And since this is often not only one single subject, you can also use these in combination. For example, we have a new probe that we use in a new case study. This is also typical for my research that I do. I should add also to this that new original research papers also now include just publishing of the data. Data collection has become so important, as well as coding, numerical simulations, that just publishing this and explaining this, why you did this and how you did this, is also now considered as original research paper. Here are some examples of these original research papers. See, these both show empirical case studies, qualitative methods, and conceptual arguments. And here's one on the left, is the example from the Humboldt University. You probably know the authors, Cecile and Jonas, small-scale land acquisitions, large-scale implications, exploring the case of Chinese banana investments in northern Laos. So this is an original research paper. And here's on this side, you see an original research paper published in the Cryosphere, which I handled as an editor. I will go in detail later about how this publishing happened. And you see both of them have an abstract. We also discussed this, how the abstract is not divided into sections, but it has your mini paper structure already in it. So the left example I told you about from Cecile and Jonas follows the typical structure of the paper that we discussed before. It is an original research paper, empirical case study with qualitative methods and conceptual arguments. And as you can see here, the structure, introduction, methods, results, and discussion follows the typical paper structure that we discussed, with each of them with subsections, of course. Then there's a different kind of paper. This is a review paper. A review paper is considered a secondary source. Now, secondary source doesn't mean it's secondary, like secondary versus primary. It just means that you use something, you synthesize, repackage, or reference primary research. So here's the difference between primary and secondary, but it doesn't have a value in it, okay? So these review papers are very important because they are used as a basis for research in nearly every academic field. Is often used to identify research knowledge gaps, and includes the current knowledge, substantive findings, theoretical and methodology contributions to a particular topic. And I will give you some examples now of these review papers. There's differences also in review papers here mentioned. So, for example, I can summarize empirical findings in the field by a structured purposeful review. I can do a meta-analysis using statistical methods. I will show you an example in the following. Or you can synthesize a limited number of case studies. Another example for a potential review paper is when you summarize methodology approaches, or you go to the third option here, review an empirical issue from different theoretical perspectives. And the last option is review the development of a theoretical argument framework in the literature. So these are all ways that you can synthesize the primary literature into a secondary review paper. Here's an example of a PhD student in our team here in Potsdam who used a lot of data in a metadata statistical approach. I give you an example of a review paper that uses data. So this is a map of the Arctic, and you see these dots here. This is where collections of data are available, either online already, as in data archives, or with colleagues or so. And she took all these data from dissolved organic carbon and piled them together in a metadata analysis, including statistics. This is the title of the paper, First Pan-Arctic Assessment of Dissolved Organic Carbon in Permafrost Region Lakes. It's currently under review, and I just want to give you an example how this paper, how this review paper looks like. And again, this paper also has the same structure that I explained to you before. The typical paper structure separating into the introduction, where she describes the study site, the method, data extraction from existing studies. As I said to you before, she went into all the metadata and data circum-Arctic and extracted them into one new database. And then she explains the sample database and geospatial, the analysis and the statistical analysis. And then the paper structure follows also the same as before of an original research paper, actually, results, discussion and conclusions. So this paper has become very important because this new approach of taking everything what's available often leads to new surprising results. This is a conceptual review paper example. So this is again from Cecile and Jonas, who have a paper published in the Journal of Land Science. You see the title here, From Teleconnections to Telecoupling, Taking Stock of an Emerging Framework in Land System Science. So this is a conceptual review paper. And again, these papers, even though they source primary data and are regarded secondary, these are published papers, and they count as they are indexed and as well. So, and then some explanation, a review paper versus a literature review. So the review paper, as I told you before, it's a full paper reviewing the current literature on a given topic and in a given field. It defines important terms and resolves confusing or conflicting use of vocabulary, or it produces new protocols. So it's a full paper, and with index, I mean it's indexed in all the citations and so on. So it counts as a full paper. However, a literature review is a method and part of writing any type of research paper. So every paper includes a method, every thesis includes a method description. So all research requires a literature review, all papers include a literature review. So differentiate between review paper and a literature review. Then there are many other types of research papers, and often it really depends on the community you're working in. For example, in the geoscience community, it's different than in the physics community, it's different in the ecological, and it's very different in the socio-ecological or socio-economical communities. So, for example, we have types of research paper as comments or policy, forum or letters. These are short comments, published research, original research into a policy discussion, can present opinions or typically intro, findings, arguments, discussions. So the format is also different here. It's different than the paper frame that we discussed, and it has a different number of words. So then there's conference papers. These are published in conference proceedings, often preliminary results and analysis. That's for my geoscience community. But for example, in computer science, these conference papers already have a very different meaning. You publish your final results in conference papers. So remember, it's different between the communities. It can, but may not, follow basic research papers and can focus more on context and results. And then we have another type of research paper, which is extended abstracts. So extended abstracts are short condensed conference papers, so they are blown up abstracts, let's say. They extend an abstract to give background to the presentation at conferences, and they're typically divided into background, preliminary results, main argument, and brief discussions.